This evening, President Trump is set to deliver his first official State of the Union address. I want to talk just for a moment about the things we expect him to say, as well as what we imagine he'll leave out. First, the White House has said the president intends to take credit for the economy. Just as he was born on third base and assumed he hit a triple, the president thinks our economic recovery is all thanks to him, when reality is that he owes a lot of it to Barack Obama. Two words I don't think we'll hear tonight on the economy. Thanks, Obama. Under President Obama, the employment rate plummeted from 10% to down under 5%. The stock market, which Trump constantly brags about, grew faster under Obama than it has under Trump. And President Obama created more jobs in his first year than President Trump did in his. Second, we expect the president to talk about bipartisanship, but throughout his time in office, he has failed to walk the walk. The administration has repeatedly excluded Democrats from working on major policy initiatives, from taxes to health care. Their version of bipartisanship is having Republicans get together in a back room, write a bill, and then pound the table and demand that Democrats support it with no input at all. But lastly, one thing I bet the president will leave behind is Russia. Throughout his term in office, President Trump has failed time and time again to stand up to Vladimir Putin, despite the assault that he carried out on our democracy in the 2016 elections. Now that President Trump has decided not to implement the sanctions that Congress passed with an overwhelming 97-2 bipartisan vote in the Senate and similar in the House, he has decided not to implement those sanctions. These are mandatory sanctions. They passed 97-2 in the Senate. He's ignoring them, and he's not implementing them, even though they were mandatory. Making things worse, just this morning, the Russian embassy tweeted that the head of Russia's foreign intelligence, Sergei Narishkin, a man under sanction by the United States, was in our country meeting with his U.S. counterparts. The Trump administration must immediately come clean and answer questions. Which U.S. officials did he meet with? Did any White House or National Security Council official meet with Narishkin? What did they discuss? Surely he didn't come alone. So which other sanctioned Russian intelligence agency figures has the Trump administration let into our country? And most important is his visit, why the Trump administration decided to forego sanctions, which, as you know, the deadline was yesterday. This is a serious national security issue. Russia hacked our elections. We sanctioned the head of their foreign intelligence, and then the Trump administration invites him to waltz through our front door. This is an extreme dereliction of duty by President Trump, who seems more intent on undermining the rule of law in this country than standing up to Putin. Instead of spending all of his time attempting to undermine the credibility of the FBI and waging an all-out assault on American institutions, the president should train his fire on the foreign adversary, Russia, that attacked us. When it comes to Russia, President Trump has fallen down on the job time and time and time again. He owes the American people some answers.
There are various pieces of legislation to protect Robert Mueller. Will you tie this in budget negotiations? It's our understanding you do, but is it your bottom line? Must it be included?
We'd very much like to put it in legislation. Our Republican colleagues have thus far resisted. I have to say I'm really appalled by our Republican colleagues in reference to this. They've always been defenders of the FBI and protagonists of Putin, and they seem to have flipped. They remind me of a movie, The Silence of the Lambs. They're just not saying a thing, but we're going to push hard to get it in.
The White House has indicated that the president will have a moderated, sort of bipartisan type speech tonight. This White House has had different messages, at times very conservative, at times changing stances. Do you think there's anything you can take away from the speech tonight?
Look, the president, if he talks about bipartisanship, this has been the most partisan administration that I have served under, and that starts with Ronald Reagan. Republican presidents Reagan, H.W. Bush, W. Bush were far more bipartisan than this administration. So the words won't mean much. He's got to walk the walk. For instance, on infrastructure, are they going to do what they've done in the past? Put out their own bill and say, take it or leave it. That wouldn't be very bipartisan. Thank you, everybody. Much of the growth in 2017 was created by President Obama's policies, and by many measures, the growth under President Obama was better than under President Trump. Under President Obama, employment was driven from over 10% down into the 4s. The tightening of the labor market finally started to reverse the stagnancy of median income. The stock market that President Trump often touts on Twitter, it was booming under President Obama as well. In President Trump's first year, the economy created 2.06 million jobs. That's less than the 2.24 million jobs created in 2016, the last year of Obama's term. Again, President Obama created more jobs in his last term. President Obama created more jobs in the last year of his term than you created in the first year of yours. So if you're going to pat yourself on the back, give a shout out to Barack Obama, because he did even better than you in job creation. In 2017, under President Trump, the average monthly job growth was lower than in 2016, 2015, 2014, 2013, 2012, and 2011, all under President Obama. Again, President Trump, job growth in your first year of your term was less than in each of the last 6 years of President Obama's term. How about the stock market? In the first 6 months of 2017, the percentage growth of the S&P 500 was lower than during the first 6 months of President Obama's term. In the first year of the Trump presidency, the percentage growth of the Dow was lower than during the first year of President Obama. So again, here are 2 words we'd like President Trump to say tonight about the economy. Thanks, Obama. We may never hear President Trump say those words, but he ought to. I also expect the president to speak about bipartisanship. President Trump understands there's a very low bar when it comes to the topic. His first year in office has been so divisive, even a mere appeal to bipartisanship sounds like progress. But the proof will be in the pudding. Will President Trump pursue real bipartisanship through his actions, or will he fall back on empty rhetoric? When it comes to bipartisanship, President Trump has to walk the walk, not just talk the talk intermittently. Mr. President, when it comes to bipartisanship, actions speak a whole lot louder than words. And I'd remind President Trump that this has been one of the most partisan administrations many of us have ever worked with. I've worked under President Reagan, President H.W. Bush, and President W. Bush, all Republicans. All of them were legion more bipartisan than President Trump's first year. What have we seen? An assembly line of partisan CRAs designed not to need a single Democratic vote. A Supreme Court justice picked by the hard right, Heritage Foundation, and Federalist Society. No consultation, not a consensus nominee. A partisan health care bill that failed under reconciliation, specifically designed not to include Democrats. A partisan tax bill that ultimately passed, also under reconciliation, no consultation with Democrats, not a single Democratic vote. The reason that these don't get Democratic votes is President Trump and his administration don't talk to us. They don't ask us what we might suggest. They don't try to create a bipartisan meld, which great presidents have done from the time of George Washington. They just act in a narrow partisan way, and the American people know it. There's hardly been a shred of bipartisanship in the Trump era.